So we already done the firewall router, and now what we're going to do is we're going to configure our database server. And as what we did previous with configuring network interfaces for firewall and firewall server and network interface for web server, we need to do the same thing for database. And since the database itself is within or in our private network, so we should configure the IP address towards with the same subnet for the private network. And as you can see here, when I run ipconfig, we could see that we have one network interface which pointing to 192.168.10.11. So this is the IP for our private network. And then yes, there is one more trick that I want to share. This trick might be unorthodox because I'm not sure whether people always do it, but I found this trick to be very useful. So as you can see here, we have two network interface. One is the IP, the static IP that we configure for the private network, and then we have one more. This is the DHCP, and if we go to our database, go to settings and network, we have two adapters. So why I create another adapter? This adapter is not for specifically this project. I mean, it can be used for another project that you want to use. Since this network, this private network, doesn't have its own internet connection, so whenever we need something, for example, we need to yum install PHP for an instance, and we don't have any internet connection, so it would be hard for us to reconfigure back our, in this case, ENP0S3, which we have already configured as static IP, to change from static IP to DHCP, so that by using the subnet that contains the gateway to the internet, so that we can yum install anything that we need for the project. So by using this way, we can, for example, if we want to use the internet, then we can just close the connection for the first interface, the private network interface, so we can continue with yum install and so on. And if we don't use any internet, so we can just turn off ENP0S8. So I hope this trick could help people to easily install when there's no internet connection inside the network environment. So let's go back to topic. So in order to create a database, so we need to use MySQL or MariaDB, and in this case we are using MariaDB. So first I would like to check the connection, the status for MariaDB, and you can see our MariaDB is active and running. If you don't have any MariaDB installed in your database, you need to install it first and then start the process. And then what we need else, we need to see our HTTPD. So when we install Apache or HTTP, some CentOS, some yum doesn't install PHP. So in order to use MySQL and PHP, we need to install PHP. And if your CentOS doesn't have any PHP, you need to install PHP first using yum. And yeah, that's it for requirements. So for creating a database, first you need to set up the database. And to set up the database, it was straightforward, and you can find the solution online. And for now, I just want to explain on creating a new database which we can be used for our web page. So first thing first, you need to make sure you have all the requirements and create your user for MySQL or MariaDB. And after that, you can continue with this step. So to log into your MySQL database, so you need to use MySQL-user and root-b. So enter password. Now we are in the database configuration environment. So what we can do is, now I want to create a new database which I want it to be used for my web page. So I create a database name reviews, and here the syntax and everything is based on MySQL. So if you already know MySQL, then it will be easy for you to continue with database configuration. And then we're going to use reviews. So as you can see here, we change from the general environment of the database. Then after we create a new table, we use that database. See, we create database reviews, then we get into the database. So now what we need to do, we need to create a table called user review. And here, this is where we put the database field that we need. For example, name, age, and etc. Now I have already finished creating a table, so these are my fields that I'm going to use. I have ID, reviewer name, star rating, and details. So let's press enter to create the table. And the query said okay, which means we don't have any problem regarding our table. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert some data inside. So I will use insert into user review. So we have, the first one is we have reviewer name, star rating, and we have details. So we're going to assign some values. So let's say the first item, the first user that I want to put is my name, done. And then I give 5 star, and I type for the details, I really love product. So this is how in MySQL we manually insert using database data. So we can continue, and now we don't have any problem since the query said okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to give a command to the database which grant user access to this database, not for write or execution, for read. And the line of script is like this. So here we can put admin add, and then we need to follow up with a localhost. So for our localhost we use our IP address, so 192.168.10.11, and then identified by, and this part we need to create a password. So let's say so you really need to remember admin, our localhost, and our password, because we are going to use it in our PHP file in order to allow read from the remote access to the database. Since this database is in another server and our PHP file is in another server, then we need to use remote connection to connect. And press enter. Now query all okay. So this is how we create a database in CentOS or Linux. And now we going to focus on our PHP. Okay, so we have finished our database, we have configured our database, and we have some important things like localhost, root name, and our database name that we need to remember for our PHP script. So now we are in our web server. We need to create our web page inside this server. So first thing first, we need to make sure that we have installed PHP MySQL inside our web server. Why we need that? Because we are trying to read data from a localhost, which being translated into HTML by using PHP. So we need to check whether we have HTTPD installed. Alright, and then another thing that we need to taking care into is yum install php-mysql. So this line it will check whether we have PHP, mainly PHP MySQL, since we are dealing with MySQL database, and we need to install it. And as you can see here, we've already installed. If you just finish install, make sure you run system control reload HTTPD, restart HTTPD. And okay, good. So we have configured our requirements, and one more thing that I need to check is we need to check our cell Linux. At some point our cell Linux doesn't allow any database connection. I'll give you an example. In our case, we set as status get spool -a pipe grep httpd, and here there are these two lines that you need to turn on. Because I have already configured this part, that's why it's say on. But if you just use get spool -a grep httpd, you can see that these two lines are off. So what you can do to turn on is you can type set spool. For example, we want to turn on httpd can network connect. So httpd can network connect 1. So 1 meaning that we turn on from 0 to 1, and then press enter and continue with this line, httpd can network connect db. So after you run those two lines, we can continue with our project. So in my cd var www.html, I have created a sample of a website which can add user to database and read from the database. So my index.php, when I go to bin index.php, this is my landing page. I have a link. I have two links, create and read, which pointing out to two different PHP files. One is create and one is read. And here we don't have any specific configuration on the PHP. So what we can check, for example, let's check create. Alright, good. So here we have an important thing that we need to setting in PHP, this line. As you can see, I asked you to remember our hostname, username and password. That's because we need them to be inside our PHP script. This is more like the key in order to connect with the database. Hostname, username, password and db. And db is our database, which is reviews. And this line is to check whether we have connection with the database. And then this is simple PHP script which you can easily configure by using PHP, but we need to make sure first this connection to our MySQL remote MySQL database is working, and we need these 5 lines and other just HTML, which you can do it yourself, and I'm not going to focus a lot on PHP scripting and also HTML, but these lines are important in order to connect to our database remotely. And also, if I open another one, create and another one is read. And as you can see here, we have the same configuration in our PHP. So these lines are important, two very important, because without these lines the system will not know, the web page will not know which database it wanted to reference to, where should it get its data and everything. So that's how PHP scripting works with remote database. So I have finished explaining about my PHP script. Let's see, is it working on the host PC? So before that, what we need to do is we make sure that we start our HTTPD so that we don't get into trouble for not restarting. Okay, this one took a long time. Alright, so now let's go to our host browser, and here we have a web page, a simple web page by using 192.168.1.10. and some of you might wondering why I didn't need to put index.php, since if we just run this IP, it would point out to a Apache welcome page, correct? Just like we did before this. But this one, it directed us towards our read index.php. This is because in the Apache configuration, it stated if there is no index.php inside this folder, then it will redirect to Apache welcome page, just like we saw previous in our configuration previous. So here we have put index.php, which means Apache check in this folder whether we have index.php, and if we have index.php, it will redirect us to the index.php itself. So now we have this web page. We can create and read. So let's start with create. So let's say I create a leader, and then if he don't like this project, this product, the drug that we're trying to create. So maybe she said and then we press submit. So the system said an error occurred, your review has not been submitted. Let's try again. So press submit, and now we have thanks for your review. That means our PHP script managed to send all the data that we have into our database. So let's hit our database, and let's go to our reviews, and then select as you can see, we have three database, three different fields. So we have ID, and just now we registered this command, reviewer name by Halida, starting 5. The text is so bad. And if we go back to our home page here and we press read, which means we're going to read from the database. So we have three, since in our database we have three different review, and that's how this is a simple create and read for PHP and MySQL database. And yeah, that's it for our router, firewall, and remote database. Okay, so we have finished routing, firewall, remote database, and remote port forwarding for the HTTP. So, and we can see that everything is working. But now what I want to do is I want to test. I want to create a situation. Something happened with our server, and I want to cut the connection between my local network and my public network, meaning that people cannot see our web page in our local area network. So what we can do is, remember our port forwarding code that we used to port forward our port in our firewall. So what we can do is I can remove this line. Remember we add and it's working. Okay, now we're going to remove that same line. Understood? Because I want to cut off my internal connection, my private network with the public network. And then I press enter. Just change add and remove. Success. Now what I need to do is I need to firewall cmd reload. Good. So what happens if I try to access from the public network? I will get the Apache web server welcome page for our firewall, which means that the user from public network cannot access our web server, just like we did. And we want to add again, we want to enable again, so just replace remove with add. And of course we need to reload our firewall. Success. Yes, good. So now when we test again, when we try to access our web server, we get the web page. We can read it. So that's it for this basic web application, and I hope you guys could understand what I'm trying to explain, my explanations, and thank you very much. Have a good day.